semester student, I have been exploring many different research topics, but using this workshop as a kick, I began to explore what cultural DNA is in design fields. The title is Cultural DNA from the Perspectives of Physical and Virtual Architecture. In a sense, I will summarize what I have found out while reading about cultural DNA, and I realized after submitting the paper that the title does not really include the motivation behind this topic. So the reason why I want to explore cultural DNA from the physical and virtual architecture perspective is because I don't know how much you would agree, but when I'm working on the computer or socializing online, posting links on Facebook or even on Pinterest, I feel like this. I feel like I keep losing track of what kind of information is where, to the point where I feel like myself is split apart and scattered everywhere. Little bits of the information is scattered everywhere in the virtual world. And there are so many data storage services and social network services and posting services and communication services like CowTalk and WhatsApp and even devices. We have a desktop, information on a desktop, laptop, and tablet and stuff. And we have like cloud services like OneDrive and Google Drive, Dropbox. Managing this kind of information is often called a PIM. You might have heard of it, Personal Information Management. And its goal is to identify ways to introduce new tools for supporting personal information without increasing the complexity. Some of the examples of PIMs exist today in industry is Essential PIM. It organizes appointments, tasks, notes, contacts, password entries, email messages, and it syncs with Androids and iPhones and cloud services. And there's a Primero. It also deals with appointments, events, reminders, tasks, and contacts, feed readers. The WinPIM deals with also very similar kind of stuff. And these services are still very limited, in my opinion, only dealing with emails, contacts, tasks, something that you usually do in your everyday life. It doesn't really include like social kind of information you have in different kind of machines. Also, I feel like they are like another service that I have to enter my information, becoming another service I have to take into account for information management. So, being in the interdisciplinary program and coming from the architectural background, I thought why not combine the use of architectural theories for the new PIM system. Okay, wouldn't you agree that your home is full of your personal information? So for instance, if you enter the living room far left, you will immediately find out that what kind of books the owner reads and how many families he or she has. And you can even tell like that this person has a dog. You can see the ball right here. And at homes, spaces are divided and portray different kinds of information. People place more private and dearly items in bedrooms. The picture on the middle, those that you want to keep near. So this second picture is a picture of a bedroom. And you can see several cameras on the windowsill. So this is a zoom in of this windowsill. And you can tell that this person considers cameras very dearly to him. And then sometimes you will realize that you are using a space in home just because you designated the place to be used as a particular way. So for instance, the third picture shows how the owner uses the kitchen as a gallery filled with their kids' artworks. So people have the tendency to assign and divide up space in their own meaningful way. This is true even in the very primitive lifestyles. While trying to understand the unknown environment, assigning spaces for particular activities was an important task to bring order in the chaotic environment. The occupants of Lascaux Cave from Paleolithic era considered the cave as a sacred space for rituals, while other areas outside the cave were places of living. So they divided up, it does work, thank you. They divide up spaces to organize their environments and understand how the environment looks like. But I figured how people perceive space and use the space differ for different cultures, like how different cultures have different housing styles. You probably recognize these pictures. It's from a famous book, House, Form, and Culture by Aram. And for example, you see the difference of sense of boundary between India, England, and the US in the far this picture. So the threshold for India is right near the street, and for England, it's a little bit inside, and for US, it's right into the where your house is. So it's very different for cultures, and you can even have different layout of rooms. So you can see how different ancient Egypt has this kind of layout. Greece. So, likewise, how people manage their information in the virtual space also may differ for different cultures, is what my thought is. And that is why I wanted to find out what cultural DNA is. Okay. When cultural DNA was researched and investigated, I was actually surprised that I got so many different keywords from different kinds of research fields. So I was a little taken away by so many different ideas, starting with very basic terms like culture, biology, and psychology, evolution, and information, and also the professor mentioned meme. And at a more specific level, there is artifactual language and cultural information and archetypes and transmission of information. At large, cultural DNA is viewed from the organizational DNA point of view and biological DNA point of view. So cultural DNA from the organizational point of view is developed from the field of social psychology, and it has its strong foundation from the cultural studies from such as scholars like Hofstade's work on cultures. He collects data from an organization, IBM, and makes 5 dimensions that affect human thinking, feeling, and actions. And these 5 dimensions are very relevant to experience in organizations, such as like power distance, like uncertainty, and long-term, short-term orientation. And interestingly enough, recently a psychologist published a book that investigates 8 different regions to find out what cultural differences exist in first place. So this book, it was published in 2015, and it actually views cultural DNA from social psychological point of view. And you can see that analogical DNA is actually being implemented in the social psychology field, where they have 4 elements equaling ACGT, a direct analogy. Okay. Meanwhile, the cultural DNA from biological perspective begins with Richard Dawkins, as the professor mentioned in the beginning. He coined the word meme. He identifies meme as a unit that carries the cultural information copied from person to person by imitation. So ever since the term meme, a community of memetics was formed that tried to concretize the concept even more. However, as much as it got its supporters, a community that viewed meme as a short-lived fad appeared. So even in this book by Kate Distin, Cultural Evolution, she explicitly mentions that she avoided using the word meme to increase the number of readers. So in the book, she introduces the concept of artifactual language, which are artifacts she defines as made by humans, such as writings and musical notations. Her basic idea is that these languages help humans to receive and transmit cultural information, thus the